what's the difference between anxious behaviour versus anxiety?
Yeah, look, and when we're looking at anxiety, we often use it interchangeably with
Mm,
the threat response, and they're all very closely related. Fear, the threat response, anxiety, and really what we're seeing is that anxiety is this triggering of our threat response, of our fear response, or an anticipatory threat response, so worrying about a threat that might be coming up. And so to unpack that, that suggests a few things. It suggests an interpretation of threat that has occurred, and in particular, one that has overwhelmed the individual's perceived ability or resources to cope, right? And just an example I like to
mm,
demonstrating that is thinking about, people with spider phobias. People that come into my clinic with spider phobias, they don't often worry too much about redback spiders because even though we know redbacks can actually hurt us, they're really small. And I think most people think, well, I could squash it before it hurts me, right? So their perceived ability to cope with what is actually a threat means that that anxiety response doesn't come up too much. Um, Conversely, what they tend to really freak out about is a huntsman spider, which they logically know, and we most of us know, doesn't hurt us. But the perceived ability to cope with a huntsman spider with its crazy quick movements and it's usually up high and means that the threat appraisal, even though it's low, is still overwhelming the perceived ability to cope. And so that's where our threat response comes up, right? That's where that anxiety comes up, where there is this off balance between the interpretation of threat and our perception of coping resources. Um, and so it's also, worth noting that when we're having that threat response, the brain is really motivated to stay safe, right? That we've evolved this response to preserve our survival. And so then the priority is going to be to escape this threatening situation and to secure our safety. And that happens in a really kind of primitive and basic part of the brain actually, as a priority. So all of our really good thinking and rationalizing and all of those aspects that we might want to appeal to, they're kind of almost, you could consider them offline, and all the brain wants to do is get to safety. And so that's really what we're seeing when we're looking at then the anxious behaviors. There any behavior that comes out in the brain's attempt to get to safety, or that it has associated with safety in the past that it might then cling to.